And welcome to day 2 of Beyond 2020, a post-pandemic festival. This is the showcase of a year-long project where 8 artists were selected to create works that respond to our changing world due to the pandemic, which forced closures of everything, but also galleries, meaning that artists needed to find new ways of engaging both with audiences and with each other. The artists selected spent the last year working from homes and studios around the globe, everything from Bern, Zurich, Lausanne, Geneva, to Portland in Oregon, Providence in Rhode Island, San Francisco, Berlin, Rome, and Amsterdam. This project presents the kind of the interdisciplinary work that Swissnex does. We partner with Pro Helvetia, the Swiss Arts Council, to facilitate the promotion of Swiss artists and creative industries through programs and projects on the US West Coast. We are active in the fields of art and tech, art and sciences, with a particular attention to the specific domains of digital creation, interactive media, design, and architecture. In this festival, which started yesterday, we are exploring how artists and designers make sense of our changing world and imagine possible futures. And yesterday, these artists explored new mediums, and today they are showcasing how we have redefined collaboration. This project supports our organizational mission to empower next generation innovators to make the changes we want to see in the world. And the arts provide a critical and imaginative lens to view, experience, and understand our changing society, and they shed light on possible futures. And with this, I'm super excited to see the project showcased today, and we'll hand over to Mary Ellen, who's been leading the project and will moderate the sessions. Thank you, Mary Ellen.
Thank you, Joya. Greetings from Swissnex at Pier 17 in San Francisco. I'm Mary Ellen Johnson, the host of today's program. Welcome. In 2020, Swissnex, like so many organizations, needed to reconsider how to continue to support partners and stakeholders, both in Switzerland and the US during the pandemic. How to continue to work in connecting Swiss and US networks and create opportunities for Swiss creatives. For artists in particular, the question of how to transition physical exhibitions and public programs to online formats was urgent. Many interesting platforms have been developed since last summer, but from the beginning, Zoom became the norm and remained the dominant format. Throughout the pandemic, the entire world speculated when and if we would reopen, which it did in fits and starts, depending on where you were at on the globe. With new announcements every month, our hopes were raised and extinguished, planning changed and adapted. And none of it was in agreement with the state next door or the country next door. We humans are adaptable creatures, and adaptability is where we decided to stake our claim in working with artists on this artist call. Today we will present 4 projects that presents the research and outcomes of for the artists who answered the Swissnex artist call. Beyond 2020, a post-pandemic project asked these Swiss creatives to consider how their practices altered. How were artists collaborating and working under pandemic conditions? How was lockdown impacting artistic practice? Away from crowds and public spaces, how were artists sharing their work, and how could they financially support themselves? So really, when we talk about post-pandemic, it's a constantly active and evolving condition. We have been existing in a hybrid state from the beginning, and it continues to be an unknown and the speculative end. We just don't know. The call was open to any kind of reflection that the artists wished to propose: research, artworks, poetry, performance. But they all share the common threads and questions of artistic practice and mediums, how that shifted, and how their collaborative processes changed. The transitional and adaptable process and existence in our post-pandemic world is truly at the center of the artist call and the festival's underpinning. With this flexibility and adaptability in mind, we have projects at different stages. I'm excited to share 4 today. For day 2 of the festival today, we'll learn about, or we'll consider the collaborative process and focus. How did these new conditions affect who they worked with? How did the digital tools that they needed to use change how collaboration occurred? What role did exhibitions play? For today, we'll have, the program will be broken down into, we'll spend 20 minutes with each artist. They'll introduce their project. And then at the end, we'll all come together for a common discussion. There's a focused Q&A at the end, but I want to say that you are welcome to ask questions throughout to the artists. So there's a Q&A button, just press that and we will address your question. So with that, let's get started. Our first project today is Metric Displacement with Aries, Brian House, and Marcel Zaes, who I'll welcome to the screen. Hello. I will quickly read your bios, a little introduction. Aries is a composer and musician based in Bern, Switzerland. In the world of modular synthesizers and patch chords, Annie explores, performs, and composes music and opens up sonic spaces between electronica and experimental sounds. She creates minimalistic sound textures and recurring rhythm patterns that organically interweave, distance, and disappear. With her bands, Aries Zaes, Volca Massacre Orchestra, and Berg, she regularly tours Europe. Brian House, based in Portland, is an artist who investigates the politics of time in human and non-human systems, incorporating sound, computation, and multidisciplinary research. His practice has transverse subjects from geolocation infrastructure to urban rats. Currently, House is assistant professor of art and studio head and digital media at Lewis and Clark College in Portland, and he holds a PhD in computer music from Brown University. Finally, Marcel Zaes is an artist currently pursuing his PhD in music and multimedia composition at Brown University. Marcel investigates mechanical time with an interdisciplinary framework. His creative practice consists of assemblages of self-made software code that acts as mechanical timekeepers and human performers who they play against, thereby creating an effective potential to rethink the gap between what is conceived of as human versus mechanical temporality. So I welcome the three of you. Thank you so much for coming today. And I ask if you could share your intro video, introduction to the project. I think we're having an issue with the video. Let's try again. Let's see. There we go.
Hold on a second.
Yeah. It's like as what we did, and it's more authentic to the process that we went through. We're meeting on Zoom.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Can you hear that?
I can.
That works. Okay. so we're good. So now we just do something, right? So I have this beat going, and then have it hooked up here so that I can route it through feedback.
So I have this really great module that is like stepping into 6 beats, and basically I just have to turn on and off.
And then some of the more rhythmic stuff that I did is done with the Roland, with the 808 clone.
Wait, were you performing or not?
No, I was performing, but that's fine. It's totally fine.
Hey, look, guys, it's a vinyl record with all our beats on it.
I have the turntable and the vinyl just next beside me. Maybe we could also like show it while it's turning.
I love that video. I think it really embraces the charms and challenges maybe of collaborating on Zoom from 3 very far away places. That's great. So thank you so much, you guys, for being here again. Metric Displacement was a 10-day installation that we did together in March, and where people could come and see the 3 locations live. And we had a live concert as well with Gray Area. And so maybe let's just start with you talking a little bit more about how that went. I think you have some slides perhaps to share.
Absolutely, yes, and I'll hand it to Annie, I think.
Thank you so much. So on the picture, you can see our installation, Metric Displacement, which we had the pleasure to show at Swissnex San Francisco Beyond 2020 project. Before the pandemic, Brian developed a great software called Braid.live and also collaborated with Marcel. On the picture, you can see Marcel and I performing our debut album, Debris, Life and Burn, in January 2020. The 3 of us had planned a small tour in the States, which should have been taking place in summer, but was unfortunately cancelled for known reasons. But nevertheless, we decided to realize our collaboration and meet virtually at so-called virtual studio visits on Zoom. We were regularly exchanging ideas on topics which were relevant to our artistic practice, and we were demonstrating musical ideas on our instruments. So that we all had insight into the material that Brian, Marcel, and I recorded individually to present them at our weekly studio visits. We worked with Dropbox. We made recordings almost every day, and this is how we created our so-called beat diary. This is the folder structure that you can see in the picture. I would start right away with my example. I've been building over the last 2 years an instrument, a modular synthesizer, and I've been learning how to play live, and I'm using modules from mutable instruments, Dupfer and Make Noise, which allow me to create a beat. Let's have a listen.
I'm sorry, I'm taking it from you, Annie. Thank you. So I just wanted to show an example that I contributed to the shared digital diary, a beat that I made in the pandemic, and that was reflective of my state of being and my location in an extended sense. think we're going to hear from Brian.
Yeah, and so my interest in our meetings was in developing nonlinear of natural phenomena. And so this is an example of one of those where you have a kick drum that's changing its tempo in the beat and it's changing the way it's changing its tempo. So if you want to play that.
So I think we were having some connectivity issues with Brian. So maybe you could pick it up, Marcel or Annie.
Is my audio okay? Should I continue with audio only?
Oh, great. There you are.
Great. So yeah, of course, you know, with this collaboration, we're doing this from very different locations, distributed around the globe. And, you know, while that would have been possible prior to the pandemic, suddenly it became a primary mode of collaboration and also community in the midst of all that, you know, a way to cope with what was happening. And of course, this is all thanks to the internet, and Zoom attempts to make it feel seamless, but you know, it isn't, as perhaps my connection is demonstrating right now. So the glitches and delays, you know, that happen over the course of our that happened over the course of our conversation, because we were talking about rhythm, inevitably we realized that we had to embrace this fourth collaborator, which was the network itself. So when we were thinking about an exhibition for Swissnex, the idea emerged that what if we had seamlessly, but only over Zoom? So the particular between. And so this is a sketch of, you know, just what we were imagining. To emphasize the idea of the places being joined in virtual space, we thought we would just have the individual rooms with turntables each playing the beat. And so you could see kind of the daylight changing in each physical space as these beats were playing. And here's a sketch of the setup. So you have the turntable streaming out to the internet, which is accessed by the audience. And I think next is another version showing Marcel's particular setup in Providence, where we're thinking more about what putting the turntables in front of windows could do to emphasize the location. And then of course we have these interactions with passersby who are maybe looking in and seeing you know, just one part of this installation, unknowing that they're becoming part of the collective over the internet for online viewers.
So yes, thanks, Brian. I think that was quite beautiful having you here drop out. Like that's very reflective of the project and the process that we actually went through with this work. And so we made these beats, each of us with their respective agenda and research interests in coding, physical making, in modular synth tools and so on. We pressed them, or we cut them into as lathe cuts into vinyl as locked grooves. So instead of a spiral on a vinyl, you have rings that loop relentlessly forever. So we started working in these 1.8 second loops, and we felt that there was something here on the internet, on Zoom, about the medium, the mediacity of how we work with beats, that sort of downgrading back to vinyl, but then playing that over Zoom does something to our work and to our beats. And so we went this route. And so these are a few screenshots from the 3 locations. This is Ben, Annie's location at the University of the Arts. This is the Portland, Oregon location at Lewis and Clark. This is my location at Brown University in Providence. Each of these were like very, very different in terms of urban setup, in terms of framing, in terms of lighting, and we played, or the installation constantly played, with differences between daylight, between weather conditions, traffic, different lockdowns, and so on. And this is how it looked like on Zoom. Yes, I think I'm going to stop it with this, and I hope that these impressions give you an idea of not only the project itself, but really also of the process that we went through when collaborating from a distance.
Thank you. I think you did a great job of representing the collaborative process between you guys. I absolutely loved that you chose to install in front of those windows, because I just love checking in periodically on the installation and seeing, oh, I'm in San Francisco, so there's Portland, same time zone, watching, it's nighttime in Bern, the sun's going down in Boston. I thought that was really great. I wonder if I could ask you a question about how the collaboration, if you collaborated with your universities as well in some aspects, like as an institution, did you? And if you did, how did that go? Did you work with students? Because you're all based at universities in art and music contexts. Could you talk a little bit about that? Maybe I'll start with you, Marcel, with Brown.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to. As you know, I think in non-pandemic times, this would be the project that I would have been collaborating with students and involving them and so on. But because it was the pandemic, the entire campus was in lockdown and still is, right? And so I had no access to even the gallery, the art gallery, the space where the turntable is installed. So I wasn't allowed in. So this is a very, very weird situation where we were dependent on our institutions for institutional support and support in terms of facilities and infrastructure. I mean, there were all these 3 institutions were kind enough to give us these spaces. The art galleries that were unused at the time. And so it was a quite complicated setup, especially in my case, to organize for someone else who was allowed to go in on a daily basis, because with our project, I said before that these turntables, these loops, these locked grooves were playing relentlessly. So once a day, each one of us went in and changed the loop, changed the needle to a new loop. And so I couldn't do this myself. I had to hire someone who did that for me. So this is how it worked with in my case, with my institution.
How about you, Annie? Did you have any collaborative opportunities with Bern, the University of Arts in Bern?
In Bern, we didn't have in end of March a hard lockdown anymore, but yeah, we weren't allowed to have classes in the facilities, and that's why I decided to change the needle by myself. And as it is in Bern, we're pretty close everywhere, so it wasn't an effort to me to go there with my bicycle and change the needle. I thought it was quite nice to see the school still, although there was no class happening.
I'll ask you the same question, Brian. If you had the opportunities to work with your students at Lewis and Clark College or with the university gallery.
Well, I was I was teaching a sound art course, but we were all remote. And so that did become part of the conversation with students, you know, how that works, and sound being such a spatial medium. What does that mean when you take it on the network? So I was sitting here in the facility, but by myself, talking to students over Zoom, and able to set up our installation here also. So it was good to have that conversation. But well, I'm looking forward to having them back in the class.
What's next for this project? Do you see metric displacement as having a next step or phase, or for the three of you as a collaborative team, is there a next step?
You know, I think a nice outcome of this was that we were able to do the live performance at Gray Area. And it was an opportunity for us, after having produced the installation, to then bring it back to this idea of live performance using the same vocabulary. Of course, we were still all distributed. But I think, you know, we've talked about ways to take that forward, and how learning from how to work over the network, we might actually be able to make an even more kind of compelling live performance out of it. So, you know, we don't have a concrete form for that yet, but I think we're planning on continuing to work together.
I absolutely agree with Brian. I also want to say that because we made this project as with the sort of idea, hey, can we make an exhibit for Zoom when, as you said, Marielle, in your intro, that Zoom has become so normalized in the pandemic. And so we made this piece. But now at this point of time, we're also a bit like, yeah, but what if? What if perhaps COVID someday, hopefully, disappears? Will our project still be relevant? Who will actually be looking at the project like this, where we're all also so oversatisfied, bored and tired of Zoom as a medium, and really excited about getting things back into the real world. And so what is almost paradoxical now is that we actually just submitted it for the first time for a festival, the work. A festival that specifically wants works that are in person and physically present, which this work is not. So we're now thinking about sort of hybrid formats that this work could take in the future, where there is a Zoom part, but there is also a physical part. And I think this is really what is called by Swissnex, but also making this work has done with us and to us, that we're really thinking about hybrid practices from here onwards.
Well, thank you so much to all three of you. We'll welcome you back in about an hour to talk more together. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now I'm going to invite Alan Bogana to join me to talk about his project Laser Sensitive. Welcome, Alan. Thanks so much. Thank you so much for participating in the call and the project. I'm really looking forward to talking to you today. I'll just briefly do a little introduction. Alan Bogana is an artist based in Geneva, Switzerland. Over the years, Bogana has developed a multi-form art practice involving installations, sculptures, time-based media, virtual realities, and holograms. His research focuses on the real and speculative behavior of light, as well as on the emergence of organic shapes and patterns by means of technological processes. He holds degrees from HED in Geneva and ZHDK in Zurich. Welcome, Alan. I'll ask you now to play your intro video, please.
Yes, with pleasure.
Thank you so much, Alan, for that intro video. There's a lot to unpack, I think, on your website. Perhaps you could you could walk us through the website a little bit further.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm going to share again my screen in order to continue the presentation directly on my website. So do you see it?
Yes, looks good.
Great. So, as shown in that short introduction video, this project is presented as a website, which include a series of sections, which present sort of subtopics and different strategies I've been exploring, which focuses on the idea of studying, inquiring on the visual culture or the iconography of laser light, and as well as the mediating role of the digital screens and digital cameras that we are more and more using, especially during the pandemic. And so, for example, the section Polarizing Times consists of a series of collage. And initially, it was a physical installation that was taking several meters of space, and I rethought it for this platform, and I'm going to show you. You could automatically scroll through this collection of found images. So basically, last year, I was intrigued to address and to work with laser light, which has been like a medium in my practice for many years, and to address the representations of lasers. And the more I was collecting images about it, the more I was sort of noticing like a pattern of typology of images, where if I would organize these images along an horizontal axis, images that were more related to confrontation or trivial or mass uses of this technology were emerging. And at the same time, there was also another aspect of it. If I collect these images over a vertical axis, images more related to utopian applications of lasers were emerging. So it was interesting for me to exploit the potential of hypertext to present this sort of collage. And you can just manually scroll through, take your time, or automatically scroll through this web page. And another section of the website is called Never Look at the Sun, and where I present a series of experiments in which I've been basically observing how lasers physically interact with different type of cameras. Like, for example, digital consumer cameras, but also digital microscopes and drones. And they're presented as like unedited footages on the website. And very often, so you see what the camera see when a laser shoots through it. And then next to it, you could see also externally what's happening to the camera as a sort of experiment, where there's some sort of factual things happening somehow. So, and you can just, scroll through, and there are several type of footages and experiments that I've been collecting and just putting on the website. And another section called Dead Pixel Diaries consists actually in a physical installation that I was able to create a few weeks ago in Zurich, in an art space called Nano. I was very happy to exhibit again and actually work in a real space. And for this installation, basically, I've been inspired by the notion of dead pixel, which are dysfunctional pixels in camera sensors and as well as screens. It's like sort of black dots, which are also caused eventually by lasers. And I've been basically installing in the exhibition space a series of surveillance cameras. And the installation that Pixel Aries consists of a series of sticks that points toward the camera. And basically what the camera sees, it's sort of black dots, basically. And these sticks of different lengths. The tip of each stick, basically, it's equidistant from the camera so that it appears on the same size as seen from the camera. And on each stick, I've been showing a series of sentences reflecting on the notion of perceptions, dimension, switching between 2-dimension, 3-dimension, or the digital and physical context, but also questions of machine vision or the notion of blind spots.
Mm.
That pixel might hide a ladybug, a star, a black hole in a galaxy. And to go back, another section on the website, which is more of a statement rather than an artwork, deals with the laws and restrictions concerning lasers. As also with this project, I was very interested to inquire on the stigma somehow, on this sort of more visual and visible technologies like lasers, drones, and surveillance cameras, rather than the more invisible technological infrastructures around us. And yeah, that was my tour. I think that maybe we could switch to the discussion, and I'm gonna stop sharing.
Thanks, Alan. I think it's really interesting that you included, well, I think it's interesting the website is such a repository of research and multiple legs of research around lasers. And I like that the inclusion of thinking about the laws and the power of surveillance, and like you said, the mediating role of cameras and screens and drones, and thinking about how they act as a threat, and how, just thinking about like human comfort too. Human comfort with, for example, drones. We are all quite skittish around as surveilling us in a very sort of overt way, yet we're sharing, I think, especially during the pandemic, sharing so much information online more than ever. And we're so comfortable with that. But yeah, maybe you could say, or I'm curious what your thoughts are on a little bit more.
Sure. No, absolutely. I think it's a problematic aspect somehow. As I mean, I've been working with especially lasers for many years in my own practice in order to display holograms and basically relying on the physical experience of being there. And yeah, very often, I mean, I encountered many like different reactions already on the display apparatus of the artworks, of people being like apprehensive at the same time as fascinated toward it. And that's also why for me, it was very interesting for me to develop this platform as a way of mediating some aspect of my research and my work, and to present it in a different way, also to deal about this sort of reaction and fear that people have toward these technologies that, of course, need to be regular. I mean, we need laws and restrictions toward it. But I mean, personally, it became also more difficult to experiment certain things in exhibitions because of those protocols. And at the same time, yeah, there is like a very perverse movement, or I mean, indulgence toward the more invisible infrastructures like the internet and all the surveillance that happens with every click that we do on our computer or smartphone and so on. So it's kind of strange, but I think for me it's very interesting to try to talk about this aspect, just using lasers and an example on a website. And yeah, and I think it's being an open platform, it allows me really to continue it, to add content or do different experiments and give visibility to those type of concerns, and which on the website may appear as artworks, but also documentation, but also as statements somehow on my behalf.
Do you plan to continue to use the laser sensitive website or web page as something that's constantly evolving? And is that going to continue for you? Or do you feel like, oh, the pandemic is, I have a live exhibition now? Or how do you see that evolving?
No, I think it will be like a great complement for me, this kind of website. As already in the past, I worked with websites as a way of showing my research, like my research thesis when I was a student. It was a website, and hypertext was the perfect way to articulate a series of reflections, and again also using collage and using small scripts to experiment things, and I think I really want to continue it, especially also because there is a whole aspect of the project that I really also wanted to explore, but that was also related to a residency in China that has been postponed many different times, that it was more focusing on the aspect of light that heals, as I was inspired by the use of lasers in acupuncture. And this is a whole other aspect that I want to also integrate somehow and give a visibility in the website. So I think being so like open and being like structured with these different sections that have different status for me. In some cases, it's more an exhibition space. In other cases, it's more like an open statement that also function as a mediation for many of my artworks. As in the case of holograms, for me, it has been like already problematic before the pandemic to talk about them, because most of the time, none of these works have been seen through documentation, whether photographic or filmic documentation, and to have an idea of the real experience, it's hard. So for me, it was very useful to thematize basically this kind of concern into this whole project. So I think it will be a useful complement to continue it, enriching it with physical experiences as well as just plain digital.
Yeah, it would be interesting. I'm just thinking about the website, how it could act as engaging with new audiences, or how it could create potential new collaborative processes. I'm just thinking about, often artist websites, which, this is a project website, but it acts as sort of an archive of a project, but this is much more active. And I'm interested to see how and if you could potentially get an institution to collaborate on some part on the actual website. Could be interesting.
I think absolutely. I'm also planning like future presentation of the project. So and it will be like, yeah, a great opportunity, as you say, to include in the dialogue other people, basically, and to see it as really evolve as a platform also for a dialogue, not only a showcase for my personal experiences, which were also bound, to the condition of the pandemic. That's also the thing. There was also the circumstances.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Alan, so much for presenting your project. I'm going to have you come back in a bit for more discussion about where this could go collaboratively. So thank you so much. We'll see you in a bit.
Thank you.
I now would like to welcome Fragmentin to the stage to present their project Binomial.
Hello.
We have David, Mark, and Laura. Hi, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi.
I'm going to quickly say a few words about you. Fragmentin is an artist collective based in Lausanne, Switzerland, founded in 2014 and composed of 3 École alumni, Laura Perrineau, David Colombini, and Marc Dubois. At the crossroads of art and engineering, Fragmentin's work questions the impact of the digital on everyday life by investigating these technologies' disposition towards control and opacity. The studio's artworks demystify complex systems and reveal the tension arising from emergent technologies. Thank you so much. I'm going to pass it over to you to play your intro video about Binomial.
Hello, we are Fragmentin, an artist collective based in Lausanne, Switzerland, composed of
Laura,
Mark, and David. Our work often deals with climate change and the impact of technology on our daily lives. At the beginning of the pandemic and as a consequence of lockdown, many positive climate effects were observed.
self-reflecting on our practice, we ask ourselves, in a globalized society and market, how can we make sustainable changes beyond this crisis to limit the carbon footprint of the art world without limiting creativity and collaboration?
This is how we came up with Binomial, our first curatorial project. Binomial is an open source concept in which artist pairs from different countries exchange instructions on how to recreate each other's artwork remotely. Their collaboration and artistic processes are documented in a novel way in a website which serves as a modern digital archive. The resulting artworks are exhibited at the same time, on-site and online, by 2 partnering institutions in the artist's home countries. This contemporary twist of the 60s conceptual art encourages co-creation and the local sourcing of materials and production. By eliminating transportation, the project aims for a minimal ecological impact, but also proposes to redistribute the saved costs into the creation process.
For the first edition of Binomial, which will occur this summer, we have teamed up with Swissnex San Francisco and Labec, an artist residency close to Lausanne, Switzerland. We have pre-selected 12 artists with a focus on media art, sculpture, and performance.
Today, we will reveal the final selection of the 4 artists of Binomial first edition, and we are very happy to open the discussion around the project in this discussion panel Beyond 2020.
Thank you so much for that introduction. From the beginning, I loved how your project addressed the environment. Not only was it not about having to ship multiple things for exhibitions, for production, but really also there didn't have to be travel. In a way, you know, you're proposing something where artists could truly collaborate digitally and online through this idea of instruction, this conceptual art concept from the 60s. So And I also love, I'm just jumping in to tell you what I love, how also you really truly collaborated or spoke to collaboration on so many levels, both of these artists collaborating from California and from Switzerland, and also with institutions. With that, maybe, do you want to tell us a little bit about where the project is at, where you're at with doing a selection of artists and the exhibition at Lebec? How's it going?
So we pre-selected 12 artists, and from there we asked them to just fill a small form, asking them to have the beginning of an idea that will be instructed to their binôme. And now the other day we meet the three of us to kind of make the final selection. And I guess next week, so now we have our 2 pairs for the first edition of Binomial. And we will announce it, I guess, next week and also add it to the website. And from there, planning the idea is really to have both physical and online, not just doing a virtual show as we have seen a lot this year with the pandemic, but really having two physical events that take place at the same time. And of course, that can also be shared to more people through our online tool. And then the other point is really to have the documentation of the process, not just of the final artwork, as it's often the case, but really the process of instruction and also how they work together, with which tools are they sending, like postcard, or is it just by Zoom, you know, like all these questions that will actually be free for the artists to choose their own tools of collaboration.
And this is the first iteration, you plan on doing this over the years, yes? Continuing, this will be the first experiment? Potentially.
For now, I think, yeah, it's the first edition, and yeah, it's also our first curatorial project, and we need to try a lot of stuff because, yeah, there is a lot of things to do. We have to like begin at something. So hey, hopefully it will be not the first and the last, and hopefully also because the project is going on with a manifesto and an idea to make other people collaborate and use this. The idea is not only us could organize this kind of binomial, and maybe it could be done by other kind of people.
It's really like open source also in the way we have developed the visual identity. It's like it's kind of a basic concept that could be filled by other institutions and other artists. Like Japanese artists could do a binomial with people from Brazil, and I guess it's also in the multiplication of that kind of experimental format that we can make a real impact, let's say positive impact on climate. Because if it's just us that for a small festival we don't travel, then of course it's more like a symbolic action than a real big change. But I guess the idea is really to open awareness and discuss, you know, the fact that we always travel by plane, we have a nice hotel paid, but also then the fees are reduced, and what if we delete this hotel and this travel? What can we do creatively, being quite distant with the tool we have today, but still making physical event, because people need to meet each other, not just being on screens. We have seen that after this year, I guess. So it's kind of a mix of different inspiration, from the 60s, but also as we are artists working with technology, like how could we create this interesting archive of showing the process between these different pairs of artists.
Would you like to show?
Sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to add something. I think also what was interesting is that we had in the creation process artists that works with a lot of different medium, so they can also like have the chance to work with an artist that does something very different from them. So it's also like taking advantage of the skills that they don't have. So we try also to make the curation process thinking about that, having that aspect in mind. So maybe somebody that works a lot with digital will be paired with a sculptor that does something really physical, and then we can also like have this interaction that are very interesting, and that maybe they also get a bit out of their comfort zone. They wouldn't do such kind of piece if they hadn't that limitation of the exchange with another artist.
Mm. Maybe you could share with us a little bit more, share the website and give us your updates. I think
so
you,
the
okay.
website, you see it?
Yes, great, thank you.
Yeah, so the website is like a map, basically. That's why I was mentioning that it's almost like a blank map that could be filled with the different. So, for instance, when I over the location, so we have two sides, but those sides are quite open. It's not a fixed limit because it's the idea of collaboration. So on the left side, you have the Swiss part for the first edition, Labec, and on the right side, Swissnex, with the time, of course. That's quite important because when we will do the opening, you will have like today a difference of time, of course. Then you will have the different artists, and when I click on it, you have the path. So the artist C will send instruction D to the artist D. And then those will be exhibited on the location 2, which is San Francisco. It's kind of like this map, and at the end, everything is streamed also. So it's kind of this idea of messy sketch to kind of show instruction that you could do on a piece of paper, but we have done it digitally. We've created a small software for it. And for now, it's not filled. So when I over artwork BA, we just have sculpture, media art, or performance, which is the field we have chosen for these editions. We haven't chosen a topic, so the topic is really up to the artist to develop. And as Laura mentioned, the interesting part is also to combine ceramist artists with someone doing media art and see what kind of output. And 9 of the 12 artists were super motivated to take part. And next week we will release the 2 pairs. And I think it will be an interesting match, as we say. And this summer you will have the result and a small exhibitions both in San Francisco and in Labec.
So you can't tell us who it is yet, is that right? But
we have chosen, but we want just to have the final, let's say, approval. And I guess it's also interesting because we match them, but they don't know each other. So they will have to, of course, meet the first time and discuss and see if the feeling is nice for doing the project. And also interesting part, we give them the freedom. There is 2 ways they can work. So they could choose to really co-create a new project. So to have one artwork that is being made or performed twice, one time in Switzerland, one time in San Francisco, or they just want to do their own individual ideas and make an instruction for that. So you will have 2 different artworks at the end. So you can really make a collaborative artwork or 2 different ones. So this we also leave it open. We think it's quite interesting to see the outcome, the different outcome. Yeah.
So the opening is not scheduled yet. Is that right? It's happening later in the summer.
It will be this summer, probably end of summer, because the time that all artists replied, and I guess we wanted to be quite flexible as well. So everyone is also smooth and not like super stressed because we put a fixed deadline, but for sure it will happen this summer.
It's interesting too, because you, in this case, so you've been artists working together since 2014, and in this case, you're acting as curators. How was that sort of evolution? How has that transition been, working together, collaborating in that way? And also how did that collaboration happen for you this past year? You're all in Lausanne, so that must help, but.
maybe I can talk a bit about the curation process. So I think for us, it was really a new experience. We've never done that before, but we really enjoyed it. It was interesting also to find artists in San Francisco, because I was there for a few months, but since we don't live there, we had to dig on the website, etc., to find useful information about artists. So it was really an interesting process. And also the curation part, where we had to do the final pairs, we decided to each of us just think on our side first, and not share our vision all together with Mark and David. So we just to have a first idea of what we would pick individually, and then we discussed it all together. And actually it was really interesting, because the pairs that we made, naturally we kind of came out with the same ones. Sometimes one person was a bit more choosing someone else, but I think it made a lot of sense to put those artists together. So it was interesting to see that we were kind of all on the same page of the final selection process.
Was it also interesting to maybe work on an administrative side? Maybe not administrative, but how was your experience collaborating with the institution? Maybe is the question. More so as a curator, less as an artist. Did you find any learnings in that process?
Yeah, but we also used to make funding application as artists. So I guess in this time it was also funding application as curator in a way. And then we redistribute the part of the amounts to the artist directly. That money that could have actually be put in the traveling by plane, here we put it really in the artist fees and the ideation, and also potentially material if it's a sculpture, if it's a small one, but it would also be purely a performance. So I think working with institutions is quite interesting, dealing with schedule and also being very flexible with COVID. Okay, do we have a physical location, or should we do it only online? And so it was kind of being flexible. And I don't know, the idea came quite naturally, where we were all locked down at home, and we didn't know also financially how we will get help from from the state in a way, because everything was closed. So we were okay, and then you had this kind of open call for pandemics and things like that. So we start just thinking of different formats, and not just saying, okay, we're gonna wait, but we were being creative and finding motivation, and at the same time saying, okay, actually what we didn't show in the video, it's also we saw this really physically, we saw this positive impact on the climate, where in Venice you start seeing again transparent water, or in India they start to see the mountains again, that because of the smog they don't see it anymore. So all these things, that suddenly when everything stopped down, we think, okay, how could we create a format of art event that could keep going after the pandemic, not just something a bit fancy because we're going to do a virtual museum like everyone, but something a bit more in the long run.
During the pandemic, we also had a few exhibitions that were produced without us in a way. We were not on site, so it was also interesting because we had to go through this kind of process of giving instruction on people on site how to build our artworks. So it was maybe simpler artworks than the one we used to design with a lot of electronics, etc. But since we designed piece that, and then we send instruction on how to make them, and we actually never saw the final piece ourselves. We just saw pictures of it. So it was kind of going through the same process actually during this year. So it was kind of also a funny experience for us, a new way of working remotely.
For technical work, you have to have always a tech writer. So I guess the other panelist also knows it. especially with electronics, and that everything goes smoothly. So we used to do it, but that was maybe also, as Laura mentioned, an inspiration for Binomial, saying, okay, we have to build these things, but no one except maybe the museum curators or the technical staff sees this tech rider. So in Binomial, it will be presented on the website in an interesting way as well.
So now are your tech riders beautifully written, poetic?
Yeah, maybe poetic, maybe more minimal, maybe interactive. I don't know. It will also come out from the artists. We don't want to be just directing them. We just create this concept and give them freedom inside this concept and see what comes out.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your project with us. We're going to see you in a little bit when we all join together at the end. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Marielle.
And now I welcome Maria Guta and Lauren Huret to share with us their project, The Soothsayings of Iris. Welcome, Maria and Lauren.
Hello. Hi. Hi.
I will quickly introduce you. Maria Guta is a Romanian artist based in Switzerland. Her work looks into mechanisms of self-representation, which she reenacts by placing herself both behind and in front of the camera. Perpetually constructing and curating alternate cyber identities, she uses immersive digital tools and social media in her work. She holds a BFA in graphic design from the National University of Arts in Bucharest and an MA in art direction from the CAL. Lauren Huret lives and works in Geneva, Switzerland. Her work, mainly composed of videos, installations, performances, and collages, is based on an ongoing examination of the influence of media and tech culture on belief systems. She has exhibited internationally and extensively, recently at the Centre Culturel Suisse in Paris, where she did Praying for My Haters, which actually is now, that's a bit of ways. That was in 2019. But welcome, both of you. Good to see you here.
I think the screen doesn't really like us both at the same time.
What's that?
The screen doesn't really like us to be on simultaneously.
It adds a little more mystery as Lauren comes in and out of appearance like a ghost. Thank you so much, you two, for being here, and I'll have you do your introduction video, please.
Yeah.
How do you see the future of art? Art will explore our senses of perception more and more and allow us to access different dimensions. How do you see the future of technology? Can you be a bit more precise? I hate that word. I mean, technology is us. How do you see the future of Earth? Ask the sun. How do you see the future of humankind? Let's just say I'm looking forward for us to reach that omega point. You can Google that. Okay, Iris, we are almost there. Are you ready for the last 3 questions?
Thank you for sharing your video. I really love the cat. I hope that cat is out there watching. So we presented Iris together in February. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about how Iris was born by the two of you, how you came together, how that happened.
Yeah.
So Aries is a character that we invented with Maria. It's a total fiction character, but not that fictionalized. It's a mashup of several public figures we see regularly on social media. We're like super inspired by people like Kim Kardashian and Kanye West, Elon Musk, all these people in California shaping tech culture, but also like visual culture a lot. And tech culture, yeah. And we decided, and also like gurus, that has a lot of impact also on the West Coast. And then also in Switzerland, there's a tradition of healers that is very much, alive. And so we decided to create this character, Aries, as some kind of tech gurus that also works in wellness industry, because the wellness industry is so huge and, can be very problematic. So we wanted to create this like Aries character that is a bit, a bit annoying, a bit like
fake, but also with very profound aspirations. Maybe.
Yeah, like spiritual,
very spiritual, and who kind of incarnates this image of the influencer, the icon of nowadays, but in a kind of satirical way, I guess. It is a satire.
Satire, absolutely.
And I think the idea came, last spring, I was blocked in Bucharest for 3 months when the pandemic started. And just before that, I went to visit Ceausescu's villa in Bucharest. So it was his actual house. Ceausescu, the Romanian dictator, for those who don't know. And so I was sending Lauren pictures, and then she actually was like, oh my God, imagine doing a 73 questions, to take this Vogue format of 73 questions, but doing it in Ceausescu's house. And then we started to have the conversation about this type of medium and format, which is 73 questions. I personally wasn't psychologically in a very good place at that moment. I think none of us were, because it was the beginning of these weird situations. I was in a very strict kind of lockdown in Romania. And so I think I had at some point a marathon of 73 questions. I probably watched all of them. And it was somehow, it was what we were speaking about it earlier. We said it was like a domestic escapism to get access to the private life and the opulent homes of all of these people in Hollywood. And so basically that's where our idea started. But then because of the pandemic and everything, we weren't able to do that in Romania. And then it was a delicate topic the whole Ceausescu thing was a bit delicate. So then I finally managed to come back to Switzerland, and then we decided to do it here. And so thinking about this, trying to do some sort of parallel between the West Coast and Switzerland, and all of this idea of the guru / influencer, we kind of did this we found this weird parallel between, I don't know, Kim Kardashian and Rudolf Steiner, actually. And we decided to take Rudolf Steiner as another source of inspiration. And we went to visit the Goetheanum. It was, I think, initially our first choice of location, because we had to find a crazy place to shoot this video. Mm. And so we went there, but we realized it's way too emblematic, and it's too much of a symbol, and we didn't want it to go too much in the direction of anthroposophy. We also really didn't want to mock symbols related to that. So then
what month was it that you made it? Was it in June or July?
We started speaking and researching and writing it, I think, in June, July, June. And then the shooting was end of September or October. November.
October, yeah.
October.
Yeah, beginning of October,
Yeah.
sorry.
So it took, yeah, I think what took quite long was to find the location. But yeah, we had the chance to be physically together, it was quite easy to meet up. I mean, I live in Neuchâtel, she lives in Geneva. But I think we did choose this format somehow also because of the situation that was going on, because I don't know, maybe you can.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's quite interesting to look at this, like YouTube being the new TV, for like everybody. And just picking a format that is like so huge and so viral, this 73 questions of Vogue, because if you look at the view, it's quite insane. Like I think the Kim Kardashian one is like 60 million views. So it's very widespread, media, and like it's very powerful message when you think about it. And then you try to analyze what's going on in the video. It's insane, it's rich people opening their life and opening their house, but everything is staged, everything is kind of fake,
scripted.
Yeah, it's scripted, but yeah, we were like, suddenly the whole world had to stay at home, and then you look at your flat and you say, oh my, like some places are not made for staying in the whole time, forever. And if you're a Hollywood star and your mansion is huge, and as Maria said, this was kind of like channeling this like domestic escapism, or interior design escapism, like because now people like really took care of their own like inside space. They're remodeling their house. There's a huge trend, and yeah, Aries was kind of this annoying person that is mixing spirituality and business, and is a satire of a key figure of all this insane people we're seeing online,
Yeah. Did the pandemic, as it was produced and evolved over the months, did it impact in the kind of tools you used, or like how you work together? I mean, was there any sort of, did you have to change a lot as things opened and closed once you got started?
I think so. I think the hardest thing was, like to rethink and reshape the projects as the situation was evolving. But like regarding the medium, we were certain we wanted to do video, and for us, video is quite practical because like once your video is done, you can just share it online and have some feedbacks somehow. It's we were supposed to show the video for a GIF festival in Geneva, which is a movie festival. And the festival was like canceled like a week before. It was back in November 2020. And yeah, every time we wanted to show that video, and it was just basically stayed online. And then afterwards, Aries is an online character, and we want Aries to evolve and to make other objects around her and to create a very deep character in the sense like she can be, she can be alive somewhere.
We want to give her a life.
Yeah.
I was curious.
That's our, we're Dr. Frankenstein here, and we're making
we created a monster.
Yes.
Now we have to keep it alive somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah. if you were to be invited to install Iris in some way in an exhibition space, maybe you have, I don't know, or how would she evolve now? Do you have?
Yeah, we do have a project. We just, for example, we just, it's part of a celebrity culture that we were so interested in, to have a wall in your house, like for magazine covers, for example. You know, all your magazine covers you wear in the, you know, appearing in the front page. So right now we are making magazine covers, and it's also like a node, like a pun on like this woman, the crypto queen, Dr. Ruja. I don't know if you heard about her, but part of her success, she basically invented a fake cryptocurrency and like scammed the entire world. There's an amazing BBC series about it. It's called The Crypto Queen. And she took an ad in a magazine and she restaged Forbes magazine cover. And this was viral. And when you were looking for her online, there was this Forbes magazine. So people thought she was on the Forbes magazine cover, and then they trust her, and then they put the money, you know, and bought the cryptocurrency. So I think like as tools of establishment and like institution tools, like magazines covers are like super interesting for us in terms of like visual image, you know, content, like
maybe podcasts.
Yeah, maybe we can do podcasts. Yeah, we have a lot of things that we can develop products. You know, she can really sell some cream and other things.
We had I don't know, an intervention, a performance for the Photo Museum Winter Tour and the Photographers Gallery in London. They were doing.
Sorry, Maria, could you talk a little louder, please?
Yeah, sorry. We did this performance, I guess I can call it. It was supposed to be a lecture, a talk for the Photo Museum in Winter Tour and the Photographers Gallery in UK. And they do these sessions called screen talks. And so they were asking me if I want to do a screen talk, and I proposed them instead to make an appearance as Iris. And so it basically turned into a performance where Iris was giving this kind of an online meditation session of how to channel and become the best of you in the online environment. And so yeah, that was also an apparition of Iris, which is maybe something we would like to do again in the future. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your project. I haven't mentioned yet today, but you can see the full video for the Soothsayings of Iris if you go back to the Swissnex event page, as you can also click on the project links for all of the artists involved. So I encourage you to do that. Iris is about 20 minutes long.
Yeah, it's 20 minutes, but we promise it's not boring.
It's not boring anymore, and there's it really does mix up California and Switzerland in a kind of a fascinating way. And it also took me down the rabbit hole of, I think I watched YouTube, I watched the Kim Kardashian question video, and about 20 others. They are.
That's really a rabbit hole. Yeah.
Sorry for that, Marilyn.
So anyway, I encourage everyone to check out the project link on our website. I'm going to bring everyone back in. Thank you so much, Maria and Lauren.
Thank you.
All right, now we're going to bring everyone into the conversation, into the room. I want to encourage the audience again to please enter your questions into the Q&A function. Would love to hear from you. You could ask individual artists or the group. Again, please do go to the Swissnex website and visit all of these project links. The 4 you've heard about today, and there's four more that happened yesterday. I believe that Natalia has shared the link on the chat. So thank you everyone for being here again. I'm curious about, if I could ask you about, you know, we talk a lot about the loss during the pandemic, the sort of lost opportunities of exhibitions as they were opened and closed. You know, the world opened and closed. Maybe we could talk a little bit about how maybe that impacted your practice, how it altered how you created work. Maybe, you know, responding to something like the Swissnex artist call. But anyone want to speak to opportunities that maybe were lost or came out of the pandemic that were new? Maybe I'll ask you that, Alan. What was your experience?
Sure. I think that this framework of having to give up probably the physical aspect of showing a work and having all just thinking it digitally, it was great. It was great because it really allowed me to reconnect with another way of making things, just presenting research as a website, and which is something I did really. It was something like 12 years ago, basically, that I did last time somehow. So in that sense, for me, it was like a constraint, a productive constraint. I mean, I could see it that way, at least specifically in relation to the open call of Swissnex.
Yeah, sometimes the things are easier in a way in some ways, when there's more restrictions. Yeah. But does anyone else have any thoughts on how, you know, maybe you learned about a new digital tool, or you learned, was there any other sort of learnings or changes in your practice that feel like they might be sustained?
I don't know if necessarily learned, but I think I've never worked so much with video in the last many years as I did this year. I mean, it was the easiest format to work with and the most practical to also to share with others. So I also sometimes I have some performance projects which were impossible to show, like everything was canceled. So I might never do video again after this year. No, I'm joking, but yeah, for me that was definitely something that didn't happen before, to really focus on one format only.
Yeah, now we really want to do objects now. We want to do like things, you know, like with our hands. The pandemic has created an urge now to make objects for some reason.
Yeah, I understand that completely. We have a question from the audience that's for Fragmentin. Would you ever consider expanding Binomial into a sort of online artist collaboration networking platform, the equivalent of Tinder for artist collaboration? Ooh, Tinder for artist collaboration, interesting.
Yeah, for me, I guess Binomial is really not just an online platform. Especially now, I mean, for us, we really miss the physical vernissage and drinks and having real feedback on our work, and also visibility. Of course, you have visibility. It's quite funny because as Lauren mentioned, you can have huge visibility on video, but at the same time, you can also lose audience and not having the same attention to your work when it's online or when you come physically to speak. And yeah, it's quite different. So to reply to the question from my side, maybe Laura and Marc can also add something. I think Binomial can expand a little bit. As we mentioned, it's an open source concept, so someone else or other curators or institutions can take it and do something out of it. But it's not like it's not a new app Tinder style. It's really more something that could be shared online, but that could also have really a physical part and physical exhibitions.
I think for me, it's important that this stays also linked with the institution, because what was important for us is that the artists can get paid for their work. And so we also want to have that part of Binomial, so means that they can really focus on creating an artwork and have some time to do it. And it's not just like a way for them to meet, but it's also like the whole process of creation and having a place to exhibit and visibility. So yeah, I don't think it could become just a platform like this, but then I mean, it's obviously it's a platform, and the platform like is also like showing the concept, and people could get inspired by that concept and do something else from it. But for us, I think it's important that this stays like something where we have curation also in what we show, and yes.
Anything you want to add, Marc? Or you feel it's covered?
No, I think we thought out about a lot of different stuff, like creating a huge platform, making like automatic stuff where people can automatically share instructions between them and keeping tracks automatically and all of this kind of stuff. But it's really another dimension. So it's like a really huge campaign of what we want to try to do first. First, we want to do this experimental stuff and learn a lot of stuff and make people to create this artwork together, what comes out, and maybe adapt after that a little bit and show what will happen. So we don't have like huge plans for now, I think.
I think it's interesting, the question, actually. I can't help but visualize what this Tinder for artists communities networking would look like. I imagine it being a bit messy somehow. Anyway, we have another question from Sarah in our Q&A here. History tells us that after every difficult time comes a creative moment. How would you define the one about to unfold? Any thoughts on that? Maybe Annie, I'm gonna call you on.
Thanks, Marielle. Yeah, I think it's both. I had a lot of creative moments in these difficult times, thanks to the collaboration with Brian and Marcel even more. So I'm so much used to practice by myself with my instrument, and the work with them both was very fulfilling and also very fruitful. So I think from there we have a solid ground, and I'm curious in which direction we will go, and I'm pretty much sure that it's another creative moment coming towards us.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts from anyone on what might grow out of this, out of our moment? Trying to define a post-pandemic moment. I think it's difficult. There's a lot of talk in San Francisco about what might be born out of this. I don't know if your various cities around the world are doing that too, but there's a lot of talk about the tech world and how before the pandemic was really at its height, and what might come out of it. And often we talk about punk rock, great music moments and moments in art coming out of it. So it is interesting to think what might be next. How about, do you have any questions or thoughts about, I'm very fascinated by how your relationships with institutions evolved. I keep bringing up institutions, that sort of collaboration. Because speaking as someone who's worked at an institution, you know, this artist call was really something that, you know, came out of, we want to, you know, support artists, give freedom, give a moment of reflection, and do that within the limitations of not being able to open up. I'm wondering about how any other sort of experiences you might have had collaborating with institutions now or moving forward. Anything happening there?
I'm happy to say something. I'm someone who has been thinking a lot about what the role of institutions perhaps could be in this pandemic or post-pandemic moment, and what it should be also, just because I think there is also to speak to your, or to the audience question from before, there's a question of urgency with something like with the crisis, and I think it might also be quite dangerous to generalize that, you know, after a crisis this and that happens, and it's very speculative, of course, and I don't want to speculate right now, but I think not everybody has been hit the same. And so I mean, we clearly see that for some countries the pandemic really is just about to really start while others are opening up. And so I think it's, so in a way it's such a missed opportunity. I think if people in countries where things just open up, just go back to their life practice, right, and start exhibiting, which of course is great. And I mean, I would be, you know, totally down to exhibit, but then others are still in lockdown. So I think it might be a chance and perhaps even a necessity for institutions to sort of step in and do something about that, like redistribute things, means. And this is also where I really like Fragmentin's project, the sort of idea to, okay, like the things that we save, the resources that we save from traveling and whatnot, that these could be redistributed. So I think this is a great artist project, but I also think that institutions need to come up with projects to like it. I think Swissnex did. So this is why I'm really thrilled to be a part of Swissnex's project here.
Any other thoughts on how institutions maybe? I think it's there's so much impacting how institutions. I also just think of the social justice things that are happening and affecting how institutions are stepping up and changing. Yeah, they need to do it, and I think there's some interesting things coming out. Any other thoughts or questions you may have for each other? Yeah, I think in that case, maybe we will turn to our final thoughts as we approach the end of our day together. Maybe we could go around the room and each of you could say a last thought. It could be about your project, about collaboration, about what you want to do next. And I'll start with, maybe I'll start with you, Maria.
And I really don't know what to, you really took me by surprise. No, I'm actually really looking forward to continue my collaboration with Lauren, who magically appears and disappears next to me, because it's really nice that we said that the other time when we presented our project here with you, that we funny enough met in San Francisco 2 years ago. And we already knew, I think from the second day we met, that we would like to collaborate, and now it's happening and it's working really well. So a part of this project, we have already another one that we started to work on. And so I guess that would be my last thought, that I'm actually really looking forward to see the outcome of our future collaboration. So yeah, I think we were just talking earlier about the fact that individually we are at a moment where we question a lot our practice, maybe also because of the period we are going through, and because I think it's a moment of asking oneself a lot of questions, and also relating to the meaning, how, to what point what we do as artists is meaningful or not. But regarding our collaboration, we are very happy. So
yeah, and it's also like and it's super positive for us, but it's coming along so naturally, you know. We like having ideas and like adding up all the ideas, and like we're like, oh, we can do this, and maybe we can explore this area. And then, as Maria just said, I'm also, we're in a moment where like individually, like, does it make still sense to make art like as an individual, you know, as an individual artist, you know, like be pushed by like a intensive exploited market, you know, the art market? Like, do we still create like artworks to be sold or like for institution? Like, this is all the question we're asking ourselves right now. And just to bounce back on the last, you know, thing that you asked, for me, this pandemic was, you know, it happened so quickly, so fast, and a lot of things just like quickly escalated. And like, for me, it's so hard to have the distance, you know, the to take an actual decision, you know what I mean? Like, I felt maybe in 2-3 years I would really understand what this pandemic and what this, like, you know, global context mean. It's so hard to have some distance with what you are actually in it. Like, for me, it's almost impossible for me to say like, oh, everything has changed, but at the same time, we're working on media culture and tech culture and internet culture. So we'll see, you know, we'll see how it evolves. And maybe in 2-3 years, we'll be like, oh, this pandemic actually changed that and this and this. And yeah, it's history, you know, like so hard to have like I want to say like a more objective look at all this. That's
Yeah, it's much too soon to say some essential statements, of course. And, you know, yeah, of course. Well, thank you both. What's that?
Yeah, we'll see, you know, how it develops, and like, how I'll change the whole thing, or just modify it, or we'll come back to what we were in this frenetic exhibition, you know, thing. We'll see.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
How about you, Annie? Last thoughts on the world we live in?
I totally agree with Lauren when she says that everything happens so quickly, and of course it's still too early to evaluate what's happening and what we can profit from about this all, and we still need to be patient. And this and that's also good, because the last moments I had the great opportunity to work with you and with Marcel and Brian, and I'm still eager to learn even more, because that's what my experience is from now. I learned so much about myself, about my artistic work, collaborating in this pandemic, working online. So I still will be patient, and I have a good feeling what comes.
Thank you. I'll go to you. Brian.
Hi, sorry. I think, I've just been very happy for the opportunity to make this project, and also to open up the conversation about what it means to make projects in these circumstances. And I think for me in this collaboration, and maybe this is generalizable, is that it is an opportunity to rethink collaboration and community, and maybe not take those things for granted, and maybe to be a little more mindful and intentional about the ways we come together. And I think that that is valid on a social level, on a technical level, in terms of the tools we use, and those two things together, I think, is really on a political level also. And so as things change, I think there's some different hypotheses in society right now about how things might evolve, and some I think are certainly better than others. And I think as we're talking about, what art looks like going forward, I mean, there's a whole NFT craze happening, which I think is very much a response in many ways to the pandemic. I think maybe this version here, sponsored by Swissnex, is something different than that, and something that feels a little bit more hopeful and progressive.
Oh, with that, he popped out.
He popped out, and I want to say something and apologize. They're actually in a power outage right now. They're without electricity, and so I think that's what happens.
Yeah, Lauren, did you have a follow-up you wanted to say? Oh no, I thought you were waving your hand. Well, Marcel, do you want to? I'll follow the metric displacement team, and anything you want to say?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I completely agree with Annie and Brian. It was such a great opportunity for us to do work. It's been normalized to actually do studio visits over Zoom. So, while we were a collective that even before a pandemic, of course, worked on different continents. And so that in a way that was not new, but it has been in the broader society normalized that this is a format that doesn't feel so odd anymore. But then and so I'm also saying that we're going on doing that for sure. We have this routine that sometimes on Fridays we get together and we share what we're making. But in particular, I want to say something about sound, because the three of us work in sound mostly, and also in digital media. And when working in sound, specifically in digital sound, it's always been a question about what is a sound's sonic, what is a sound's body in the real life? Like, what bodily shape or what physical shape will a sound actually take once it gets exhibited or installed? And so I do think that the pandemic has done something to my understanding of sound's physical shaping in the real world. And as I said before when we were presenting that, like at the beginning of the pandemic, it was all the conversations were about, so how can we remodel or do the things that we did before in the virtual world? How can we make exhibitions? How can we play live stream concerts and all of that? But now for me and for sound, it's much more like, how can we do the things that we do in the pandemic also in physical space? And I think that's a real interesting question that is not yet discussed enough, that has so much potential. Especially for people working in sound. And so I think that's my final thought. Thank you.
Alan, final thought.
Yeah. Well, first thing I would say, thank you for this opportunity, giving the time and the freedom to explore in so many different ways the circumstances that we are all in, basically. And at the same time, I have the same thoughts like the others, as I feel that, we are still in the pandemic, like the title of the festival says. I mean, a post-pandemic festival, beyond brackets. And I think it's hard to say how, at least for me, how things will develop. And if after the first wave wave of the pandemic, I was convinced that my practice wouldn't change. Now, I feel that there are some changes going on and affected by the pandemic. I know I'm pretty slow in assimilating changes, especially within my practice. And I'm still like connecting the dots basically of what's happening. And it's hard to project somehow if in 1 year how things will develop and unfold. But I clearly remain optimist. And yeah, it's my final thought.
Thank you. And we'll go to Fragmentin. How about we start with you, Laura?
So for me, I actually saw this pandemic time as like not like a lack of creativity. I think for us, we just did art differently, and it was, I don't know, we had this art piece on a remote location on a mountain top where you had to hike for an hour to go. So I don't know, I think we find just other ways to express what we want to do. And I hope, I don't know, I hope for the future that we will see positive change. I think we saw that ecologically this pandemic has a nice effect, just as we explained quickly before. And I really hope that it will influence like artists to rethink their practice and to maybe travel a bit less or find other ways to exchange. But still, I think we missed openings where you can actually physically meet people as well. I think we need that too. We cannot do everything over Zoom. So yeah, I think you need to find the right balance. And I don't know, I just hope that we find better ideas for the art market than NFTs and such ecological ways, but that's my personal point of view.
I'm with you.
I'm done here.
David?
Yeah, maybe it's not also only about limiting the transport of plane in terms of ecology, but it's also rethinking how we produce things, the local sourcing of material. That was also one of the points of Binomial, that you don't have to buy things from very far away, but really we encourage artists to really get material on site as much as they can. So that might be also something that can emerge from post-pandemic. And yeah, apart from that, maybe we just invite you to our next piece in mid-June in Lausanne. So it's first time we have big exhibition in our hometown, and we could be finally 100 people at the opening. So if some of you guys are around, we're happy to show you the piece, which is again quite collaborative. We invite a poet, anthropologue, musicians to take part. It's like a sound piece. So yeah, happy to see you there.
And Mark, last but not least.
Yeah, maybe I can finish just with a reaction I had at the beginning with the project Marcel, Annie, Brian showed. And you spoke about the relevance of this kind of piece even after the pandemic and stuff like this. And I was thinking, just when you showed it, it was like, yeah, maybe the creativity is coming from these COVID restrictions, and you had to use Zoom, and you found like creativity in it. But I think you remove the pandemic, and yeah, your project is still like perfect. So I think it gives like, yeah, I'm confident in this project. We also proposing to people to collaborate through Zoom. And if we find some ways to make people move a little bit, like you find some ways to like move by bicycle, to just go move your needle, to turn back your vinyl, and you invited people to go to your vitrines, like it's a proof. Your project is like a proof it will work after, and yeah, we will find and project we will create now with these restrictions will still work, and we will maybe just evolve a little bit. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Mark. Well, for the final words, I again want to encourage people to please check out our event page. Everyone's project is listed there. You can explore the websites, the videos, the performances. Please do check them out. And thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks to you.
It's been great working with you the past year, all of our conversations as your projects have evolved and grown. It's been a real pleasure for me. So thank you so much.
We also thank you a lot, Mary-Ellen and the whole team.
Thank you. Everyone have a great day, evening. Let's celebrate the day.
Yes.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.